Hey guys, what is up? It's Dusty here, and welcome back to another crypto video. And guys, the crypto prices have been recovering a little bit. And to be honest with you, I actually want to go live because there's a ton of stuff I want to talk about, but we'll surely do that a little bit later today. For right now, just an update on some of the things which happened. First of all, James Fullen posted this over on Twitter. I wonder how long Senator Warren and Gary Gensler rehearsed their discussion. There's no credibility at all. And that is basically referring to Gary Gensler, who right now at the time of recording is basically in front of the U.S. Senate Banking Committee, talking about some of the points which he earlier described. And many have basically stated that this all sounds like a little bit of a scheme because if you look back, Senator Elizabeth Warren sent a letter, an open letter, sort of, to Gary Gensler first, a couple of weeks ago at the start of July, where Gary Gensler could basically answer this in any way, shape, or form he wanted to give his opinion on how cryptos compare to securities and how crypto exchanges compare to security exchanges. He was rather negative on him. He didn't reply within the deadline. He probably a little bit later. He wasn't really too, I guess, bullish or bearish, depending on how you view it. He wasn't really too one-sided. He was mostly just saying, though, that he believes that it falls, all of it, under the SEC's control. And that's something which, after this is all finished in about a little bit from now, we'll talk about a little bit further, because as I said before, guys, right now it is still playing. So I'm gonna give it some time before we get all the facts together. And then we're definitely going to cover what we can conclude from this entire talk, because it's been already really interesting to see him just discuss these things in his brief summary of the points. And it really does feel like a show, guys. I'm not really a person who likes to, speculate or call it conspiracy, but I really do feel as if it's a one big show. Now, guys, there's a couple of things which I quickly want to say. First of all, not a financial nor a legal advisor. I always appreciate everybody who presses that like button. I just think a lot of people forget to press it. And there's a couple cool things down below. You have Telegram, which I recommend you guys to check out. There's a group, and there's basically a channel, so you get a notification every time that I upload something. There is the Bybit, which is the exchange that I use, and most likely like my Twitter or so. You might want to check those links out there. All right. Then, Steve Bannon-linked media outlet ordered to pay $539 million in SEC settlement over illegal ICO. This is actually the most fun part of today. Definitely the most interesting thing that I've seen throughout the entire freaking day, and that's why I want to read it with y'all. Steve Bannon-linked media outlet ordered to pay $539 million in SEC settlement over illegal ICO. Now, actually, guys, before we move on with this, I want you guys to comment down below. Do you believe that Ripple is going to settle with the SEC? Yes or no? And there's basically three different scenarios which you can think about. One is a settlement between Ripple and the SEC, which basically means they come to some sort of term. Two is the judge makes a decision. For example, summary judgment comes along and the judge decides who wins. And three is the case gets dropped by the SEC, or just some, for example, the House or so put up some new rules, and so the entire lawsuit just becomes really difficult and really strange because maybe there's no clear winner anymore. When, for example, XRP is all of a sudden seen by the law, right, by some new law that comes in via the House as proper legal tender in a currency, but in the past it wasn't really so, and so Ripple then could have the win, but then still the SEC would kind of win for the past. It could get kind of difficult. All right, so a media group linked to former Trump-era political strategist Steve Bannon and a Chinese billionaire has settled with the U.S. SEC watchdog for $539 million over its ICO, in which it sold digital asset securities without registering with the regulator. The U.S. SEC charged New York-based GTV Media Group and Soraka Media Group, as well as Arizona-based Voice of Guo Media Inc., in connection with the illegal stock offering. It also accused GTV and Soraka of conducting an illegal ICO, which again stands for initial coin offering, like Ethereum had, in which they sold G coins or G dollars without registering with the agency. Now, one thing to quickly state here is that every single time I see G dollars or stable coins for that matter being called securities, I get some question marks because I find it really difficult to see how it goes over Howie basically, because if you think about it, one of those properties is that the investment company, basically the one that you're basically investing in, gives you an expectation of profit. But if it's something which is supposed to be tied to the dollar, then there's absolutely no expectation of profit, right? It's literally for utility. Now, in its order, the SEC said that from April to June 2020, the company solicited thousands to invest in GTV's stock offering and digital asset offering. They used their website and social media platforms such as Twitter and YouTube to disseminate information about their products, according to authorities. From the two offerings, the three firms reportedly raised $487 million from at least 5,000 investors, some of them from the US. The companies told investors the funds would go towards building the only uncensored and independent bridge between China and the Western world. The GTV Media Group launched in 2020 and has deep ties in Benan, to Benan, I should say, who served as the chief White House strategist in the first 7 months of Trump's presidency. So this is a really big name. The controversial former Hollywood producer is also the former chairman of Breitbart News, a right-wing media outlet, and GTV media outlets have garnered controversy since they launched for publishing misleading information, mostly targeting the Chinese government. And these include claiming that the thing was, we're not going to talk about that too much. And the media company agreed to settle with the SEC without admitting or denying the charges. And GTV and Siraka agreed to pay a disgorgement of $434 million plus pre-judgment interest of $16 million, and each must also pay $15 million civil penalty. Voice of Gold agreed to pay $52 million disgorgement, pre-judgment interest on $2 million, and civil $5 million penalty. Okay, so why am I covering this? Why is it important? And what does it have to do with the rest? Now, it gets really interesting because this is again a lawsuit, or mostly a dispute, with the SEC. And again, you can see how much money is going around there. Now, we don't know exactly where it went wrong, but what we're assuming is that the SEC has found that they did something wrong in offering basically stock in the company, for offering G coins and G dollars, which again belong to the system. And, well, they had to pay a huge fine for it. However, a key thing that a lot of people might miss is the fact that they are not admitting or denying the charges, but most likely, what it means here is that the SEC on paper won by getting $434 million in the disgorgement, $60 million interest, and again, $50 million civil penalty for both of these. So they won a huge fine, basically. However, from a certain perspective, this company also came out on top, as they didn't have to admit, most likely, to doing anything wrong. And the point of this one is they most likely made a ton of freaking money, and we don't know the details, right? But it could theoretically speaking be that they continue a lot of their operations now without, for example, this coin, which could be. However, they just have to pay some money back that they got from the start. But however, think about it like this. So, for example, Ethereum's ICO, right? Let's say that they got themselves $20 million. I think it's maybe $16 million, but let's say just $20 million as a start. If they now, for example, have to pay $20 million because they got that, plus, a $20 million fine each, well, Ethereum is worth $400 billion, so it's definitely not that crazy for Vitalik, for example, or Joe Lubin, or anybody like that in the Ethereum Foundation to pay back 20, even 100, or even $500 million. It's definitely feasible if that's what needs to be done for the project to be solid, right? And that's also how a lot of conspiracy theories came about, which is that Ethereum maybe paid for their spot there, or Ethereum maybe's got the connections, because if you think about it again, guys, Ethereum has so many connections to SEC members and SEC law firms, it gets really kind of fishy and wishy-washy. But that's besides the point. The point being, it really is possible to pay a huge fine and come out of it on top. I mean, a good example, actually, if you look back, there's a couple of rules, right? But one thing I noticed a little bit earlier is if you look here, you can see in 2017, for example, there was a huge lawsuit for $4 billion against EOS. And eventually they had to pay like a 26 or 25, 24, I don't know, $1 million fine, basically. But the point is, EOS is still very big, still working like a charm. You shouldn't forget, right, that was a huge problem at the time. People really crying out loud for it. However, right now, once more, EOS is completely fine. Nobody talks about it anymore. And that's because there are terms in a settlement where you can both come out on top, which a lot of people are forgetting. They think, oh, Ripple got sued right now, so they're screwed. Or, oh, they can never settle with the SEC because it's going to be bad because Ripple will never admit. Most of the time, guys, you don't have to admit, and the SEC will come out on top of this because they get money from it. Sounds like it went to them. Then again, the only contradictory factor here is that Brad Garlinghouse and Chris Larson wrote in the letter to Ripple employees back in 2020 that they had the opportunity to settle before the lawsuit even started with the SEC individually, but they denied that because they were so sure that they were going to win. And of course, the more facts that have been coming out, the more likely it is that they're winning. However, the SEC, once more, guys, is still clamming down on these things, and it makes it more and more interesting that they never went after Ethereum. Even just looking back at all these cases in which it happened, guys, it's so, I don't really get it. And in their own wording for what you need to know about ICOs, this is sec.gov/ICO. You can see based on specific facts, may be security offerings and fall under the SEC's jurisdiction of enforcing federal security laws, right? They may need to be registered, might be. So you can actually see that. If they call it a utility token, well, it does not prevent the token from being a security. And there might be risk, but most importantly, ask questions before investing, it says. If you choose to invest in these products, please ask questions and demand clear answers. And that's the fun part. Do they mean ask questions to the SEC because the SEC doesn't really give the answer properly? I mean, we saw it with Ethereum right now. They can't even make a decision. Or is it on the project themselves? But the question then, in my opinion, is what should you exactly ask them? Because if you look through this, and I did look through it really properly, I mean, a lot of things which they state, at least in my own opinion, make it look like every single thing that is an ICO is just wrong. Then again, if we look at Ethereum was fine. So what questions do you ask when you know something is fine? The rules still on ICOs are not actually that clear. And that's a fun fact. A lot of people say, oh, the ICO chapter is done and over with. I thought so, because I thought it was clear. I thought most ICOs are just, in the United States, just bad, a no-go. Until I kept thinking about how Ethereum was handled and the fact that really doesn't make a lot of sense if you start looking at the ball. And the fact that I thought, maybe, okay, they left ICOs behind them. They're not going too far at it again. No, but they're still looking at them. They're still suing them. They're still getting a ton of money from them. So there's most likely still some things really unclear. And that's, again, a deliberate act, I would say. Because all this stuff can still happen because the SEC hasn't made the proper rules, hasn't been clear in exactly what constitutes as wrong and what not. And even though these guys might have wanted to do this from the get-go, it shows a lot, all right? It shows a lot for the current progress that we can't figure out the exact fine rules with this. And we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, potentially in total hundreds of billions of dollars, because that's how big Ethereum is now, for example, and that's how big a lot of these other cryptos are in total now. It's a crazy space, guys. But yeah, wanted to give you guys that update real quick on this ICO that just got a huge freaking fine. It's pretty funny. Then again, these companies can survive after these huge fines as well. It's not the end. I don't know if these guys survived, but that's mostly because they most likely didn't want to then. All is good though. All is good for Ripple. That was it for today's video. Make sure you check out the links down below, like my Telegram. Check out Bybit if you guys want to. There's right now an XRP competition going on. You can actually still win and do cool stuff in there, so check it out. And I'll see you guys again in another crypto video later today.